Now, can you put this cup over your head?
No,
Why?
because I haven't won it.
That's right. Only those who win the cup can put it over their head, but you can, sir, give it a hug. Thank you, my assistant, Mr. Luke Russert.
Oh, so sweet. That was longtime Meet the Press moderator Tim Russert with his son Luke. In the wake of Tim's death in 2008, Luke followed in his father's footsteps to become an Emmy-winning journalist at NBC News. But after 8 years working in news, Luke went on a different path, and his new book has all the details on that. It's called Look for Me There, Grieving My Father, Finding Myself. And he writes about his 3-year journey to find himself, traveling to 67 countries, including Cambodia, Senegal, and Nepal. And Luke Russert joins us now. Luke, thank you so much for being here.
It's an honor and a thrill, and your EP told me don't be a robot, so I'll do my best.
That's Shauna laughing in the distance there. The big cheese around here. I can't imagine you could possibly be a robot. The book is terrific. I knew you were good on TV. I didn't know you were such a good writer. The title, Meet Me There, or Look for Me There, comes from a moment between you and your father at a baseball game. You're a little boy, and I say this to my kids. He says, if we get separated, he points to a place, meet me there, and he says, but of course, we'll never get separated.
I love that. And that was one of those things where I was trying to come up with a title, and it was clear that in the journey I was looking for something, searching for something. But then I also just remembered those words of, hey, look for me there, look for me there. And we did that so many times, whether it was after a rock concert or a baseball game. And there's still places in Washington, D.C. where he would pick me up from that I would drive by and I'll see, and I tear up because I can see his silhouette there just waiting for me.
The details.
And it's really heartwarming.
But it's that reassuring note he hits as a father saying, but don't worry, son, we'll never be separated. And then, of course, the tragedy of that separation coming way too soon. You're 22 years old, and suddenly you're speaking a eulogy. What's that transition like for your life and that journey it put you on?
3 weeks.
Tony, how about the audience in the eulogy?
Oh, my God, John McCain.
Yes, the president.
3 weeks out of college, father passes away, and I'm this sort of happy-go-lucky, free-spirited kid going around Europe, traveling with my mom at the time and girlfriend at the time, and I get that call. And immediately I go into a mode of I got a duty to perform. I have to honor Dad. I have to do that to the best of my abilities. So I gave that eulogy, which launched me out like a rocket. But in doing that, in going into that church and looking out and seeing John McCain, Barack Obama, Ethel Kennedy, Joe Biden, all there, I realized, okay, I'm trying to hold on to this flame and preserve it to the best of my abilities. And in doing that, I never really was looking inward and thinking, hey, 22-year-old Luke, your dad, your best friend, he's gone. How are you doing with that? I didn't think about it for years until I started traveling and I got out of the news business. And that's something I regret. I wish I could go back to that young kid and say, hey, you really should have a moment to yourself to try and at least understand the ramifications of all that's occurred.
And who knew, Luke, the pressure you were facing going into the news business? You're following your rock star dad. You were doing a very good job, but who knew that you weren't so happy while you were doing this? And you decided, I got to step back from this, travel the world and find myself. And then after traveling, it seems like you still didn't find yourself.
I was very private, and I would put forward a very sense of sort of jocular bravado.
Yes.
I internalized everything. I didn't want to let anyone know that I wasn't doing okay at moments. There was one time I referenced in the Capitol where I was so anxious that I fell over, and I was able to hold myself up on the wall, and somebody saw it, and they go, are you okay? And I said, oh, well, these are just new dress shoes. I slipped. That wasn't true, but I felt very uncomfortable being vulnerable because if I was vulnerable in some way, then I wasn't upholding my father's legacy. My grandfather worked 2 jobs for 40 years as a garbage man and a newspaper delivery man. My dad barely, I think, missed 1-2 days of work his entire career, always played through pain and whatnot. So I sort of felt that sense of, oh, you have to do this, you have to do this. There's people who have it so much worse off than you. But then came to the realization is, man, my dad loved me so much, he wouldn't want me to feel this pain.
Way,
he didn't want me to feel this way, and go explore that a little bit.
And you did, but then you have a come to Jesus meeting with your mom, very respected journalist, Maureen Orth. After you've been traveling a while, you've been to many countries and, on this quest, and she says, okay, enough. Enough. Do something, get a job, start working.
It's a mother's.
That must have been a very painful conversation.
It's hard because I had sought this freedom, and for a long time, for at least the first year or so, it was so welcome, and I really needed it. I needed to be away from those types of responsibilities.
She encouraged you in the beginning.
She encouraged it at the beginning. But as a mother has, they have that intuition. And I think she can sort of say that, okay, this very thing that was so good for you is now hurting you. You're being untethered for too long. It's a tough thing to hear at any age, especially me in my 30s. I said, you know what, Mom, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've got to figure it out.
I'm going to figure it out.
I'm a
Same thing
grown
that
man.
kids say all the time.
Because Nate, he continued to travel.
Right,
even
Right,
after that
and I said, you're being hypocritical. But it ended up actually setting me on this path of, okay, there is a clock now.
Yeah.
And you got to be conscientious of that. You can't do this forever. And who are you? And it kind of forced me to try to answer those difficult questions of who are you independent of your parents in your hometown?
Like so many, you grapple with disappointing the people that are around you.
Yeah.
And you wrote about that. And I want people to really pay attention at home because I believe they can identify with this. I feared failing in a job in the life that chose me. And I feared not living up to the family name. Do you still seek that approval? And from who? Is it your family? Is it friends? Is it the industry? Is it yourself?
My father used to say to me, your name's Luke, Saint Luke, chapter 12, verse 48, to whom much is given, much is expected. I actually had that tattooed on my arm. That was something that for many years haunted me because I go, you've been given all this privilege, all these gifts. Are you doing enough? Are you honoring the legacy? Are you honoring the name? And I felt a deep sense of inadequacy. And it wasn't until I traveled, I measured myself up against the world, and I was able to have real moments of self-reflection and self-awareness that I realized that you got to be good for yourself.
Yeah.
And nobody is going to be satisfied until you yourself are satisfied with your own abilities and your own psyche. And when I got to that place, that was the place of peace. So for me, I put my heart and soul into this book. It has been something that's been so rewarding. And it felt good to bleed out on the page a little bit.
You really did, Luke. There's a
there.
very poignant moment where you're going through your dad's things 10 years later, boxes of his papers, and you're reading about your dad at your age, the things he had done, what was said about him at your age. I can't
It was a
imagine
tough moment. We had all
see
these
his
boxes.
handwriting.
We had all these boxes in the attic, and I was supposed to go through them in 2008, and I had avoided it, because part of going through them meant that he was really gone.
Yeah.
And I come back from traveling, and I go up into that attic, and I have to sit on this little stool. My knees are near my ears.
Yeah.
And I go through every single one, and I see his handwriting, and so many times I would just break down, putting my hand over that ink, being, oh, God, Dad, touch this. He's here, he's here. But I started to see all the success that he had at a young age. And I could look inward and be like, oh my gosh, 34, he was so much more accomplished, so much better off. What am I doing? And it was hard to reconcile that. But it was important because it put me on a path of, okay, get going.
Yeah.
Do something here.
Are you happy now, Luke?
going.
Are you
Oh,
happy?
I'm so happy. And as we said earlier, you can't compare yourself to a legend.
No.
Right? But I'm doing okay.
Yeah, you're doing all right. And I think you still feel his presence, don't you?
All the time, and that's one of the most beautiful things. Look for me there. Dad's right next to me. He's inside me. He's always around, and
Yeah.
I talk to him frequently.
Yeah. I said earlier you were separated, but of course you're not in that way.
Never, and
Luke
that's the
Russert.
bond between fathers and sons. They're always there.
No doubt.
It's a poignant book. Luke Russert, thank you very much. The book is Look For Me There. It is available wherever you buy your books. Get a box of tissues. We'll be right back.
Yes.